lastly, I want to introduce our next speakers for this last segment. And originally was going to be something on key takeaways. And you know, it's interesting. I had dinner with Alexander, who you'll see on the screen and meet in a minute, in Heidelberg a couple of weeks ago. And we were talking about his journey as a former SAP, a former enterprise architect, former chief architect for another company, and how he was now a founder of an AI startup. So nice path, you know, and you guys could identify as architects, right? Architect, chief architect, now into a founder of an AI company. And I found our conversation over dinner interesting of his journey. And he's paired up with someone, I would say, who's maybe just a few decades younger than him on the startup side as well. And it was interesting, the conversation, understanding how he moved from the SAP side of things, how he paired up with a young woman founder in the mix, former DeepMind background, you learn about her, and how they sort of came together for a pretty cool AI startup to do things. And I thought a bit of their story, and it was good pairing on the back end of Rashad's talk in terms about upgrading ourselves in many ways. You know, you have Alexander, who did his big upgrade, who paired with someone from a Gen learning side. So we'll take a few minutes to kind of hear a bit of their human story. Yes, they have great technology. They'll be out there tomorrow on that. But I thought it was interesting, the human side of things as well. So join me in welcoming Emma and Alexander.
Thanks, old man. Old man.
All right, thank you very much, Paul, for kind of the introduction, for giving this opportunity to us to represent. And you know, we are very excited to kind of share a little bit of our personal journeys, which I think follows pretty nicely to a lot of themes that Rashad was talking about earlier. So maybe as a starting point, maybe Alexander, do you want to give a little bit of background about yourself, as you know, coming from the SAP and spending decades in it, and a little bit of background of what you've done before to give context here.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Emma. Yeah, my background is 33 years of SAP. So I started in 1992 when SAP had 400 employees. Then I've done a lot of enterprise architecture. And then in 2006, I started for Hasso Plattner the HANA project. So we built more or less the new architecture of SAP, what you are using today and in the future from scratch together. Quite innovative platform. Also thinking out of the box, and after this I was more than a decade at Accenture, responsible as a CTO also for the global SAP business group, and we have implemented a lot of SAP S/4HANA systems, and so but I was always interested to learn the latest things, so probably you also want to introduce your...
Yeah, thanks, Alexander, and happy to give a little bit intro about myself as well. So I came from very much not the SAP world, so like very, very different technology stack. So my personal background is I studied computer science, back at Caltech, concentration on machine learning. So ever since college was very much like leaning more on this like data science, machine learning, AI side. Previously, I worked at Google DeepMind and Facebook AI research. Now it's Meta AI research on various NLP-related research projects. So very much on the more research side in the past, and also have been in a startup space. So I had previously started a company that was more in actually the foundation model space, experimenting with novel foundation models in the as LLMs were starting to become a thing, but before ChatGPT and before all the models really started to get scaled up significantly. So everything before what we're currently working on together was very much on the, you could say pure more on the pure technology side, more on fundamental tech stack. And I think one question is, given how different our backgrounds are, you might be curious how we ended up working together and what we even could be working on together, right? So maybe one sentence to set the stage a little bit is where we're building AI agents for the clean core transformation. So it's very much at the intersection of AI and SAP. But actually when we met Alexander, you were already very deep in the AI space, and that's one thing I was pretty impressed by how much you knew. So I'm curious on when did you start taking AI seriously, and how did you get into that in the first place, right? Coming from very much a SAP background in the past.
Yeah. I'm always interested in the latest disruptive technology stacks and applies this to business processes. So I had a deeper look over 2-3 years about the AI technology stack, also the different capabilities and also the fast improvement and advancement in such platforms. And there was also then the change. I built some AI systems by myself, some custom GPT models, applied this for some different use cases. And also I had a lot of conversation with CIOs in my last role at Accenture, and they often complained, yeah, I want to move to S4, I like your HANA system, but at the end it's so expensive to do all the custom code move, and it takes so long, it's so risky, at the end it often not really works as supposed. So I looked on the capability, what AI can provide, and one of the core capabilities is coding, more or less. This is what AI can provide. Interestingly, I talked to several people at Accenture, and Paul Doherty, the group CEO of technology overall of the 400,000 people, he introduced me more or less to Emma because he is now one of the investors in the company. And so we got connected and we realized that this can be a good use case. Mm-hmm. So I ended up now as a co-founder for this coding agent platform to move to use this for SAP, which is for me a kind of natural next step to really help the clients. And on the other side, it's also interesting for me how somebody with this fancy new topic of AI working in an SAP space. Even when we see all in the valley where the company is based in San Francisco, that the main companies like Apple, Nvidia, and all the big, Google are running on SAP, but it is an enterprise topic, not so in the core. So it's interesting how you work on this.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing, Alexander. Yeah, and the fact that that you started learning about AI and put it out there, and other people knew about it, right? That's how we really got connected, which is super cool. And from my side of how I made the transition from more the pure technology stack to something that's more like applying this technology to a specific industry, right? So I actually, when I started this company earlier, I was working on generally still more on the technology side, using AI to write code. And we sort of built out the system, and it was had pretty good state-of-the-art results, but then realized that actually when you focus only on the technology side, there's kind of a limit to maybe how much impact you might be able to have, right? So for example, just an example of what we're doing, general coding agents, it's if you have a very general coding agent, it can't solve a very complex, large-scale problem, right? So, I think that's where we realized that really constraining the problem space can help you get to a solution that could solve real-world, complex, large engineering problems. And I think this is where actually. Yeah, when we started with building general coding agents, we started talking to a lot of different types of engineers to try to understand the different types of engineering tasks that people are doing in the world, and learn about many different types of engineering that I've never heard of before. Actually, funny story, before last year, I really did not even know what people use SAP for, right? I've never seen an SAP system. I knew it was a big company, but it's kind of there's a joke in San Francisco about Salesforce. They're well, there's a big Salesforce tower. People are what does Salesforce even do? And actually, a lot of people who are working in technology, they don't know what it does, and they don't know what SAP does, right? They just know these concepts exist, and people don't really bother learning more about it because, working at a pure tech company or a small startup, you don't really need to use Salesforce or SAP or anything. So, I just talked to as many people as I could, including learning about things finally learn about what Salesforce is and what SAP is and what they do. And I realized, wow, there's actually a really interesting opportunity here because there's a lot of different types of engineering that people are doing within the space. And, we saw a really interesting, sort of intersection between what the market needed and the technology that's being built. So that's how we got into that. But, it was a long process exploration. I talked to many different types of people and to try to understand what they're doing. And when I was in the past really used to one very specific type of engineering, right? So that's kind of how I learned about SAP and realized it's a really interesting field, and spent the last year or so now really getting deep into the space, and I only know the surface, obviously. So there's probably many people in the audience here that know a lot more than I do, but it's been an interesting learning journey. And maybe like Alexander, one question for you is I think one thing that's impressive to me, because I'm much earlier in my career, right? Like I don't have that like that many years, like as a versus you've spent decades in SAP, and like now I'm not saying you're old or anything, but you're just very experienced. Yeah. So you've spent decades in SAP, and you've like really built a name for yourself in this industry, and yet you chose to really learn about the very new field where you are a beginner again, right? Like where people much younger than you, like myself or other people they've spent a lot longer in it. That's one thing that I've always been interested to hear about your perspective of how did that feel, and sort of what made you take the leap to really become a beginner again, right, in this very new industry. And really any advice to people here, because many people here are probably coming from SAP Enterprise Architects background, but interested in learning about new technologies. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or advice on how they can approach it based on your personal experience.
Yes, that's a good question at the end. More or less, you have to learn in a new field. You have to be a kind of fresh beginner. You can apply some knowledge you have. On the other side, I only learned over the time that the last 50 years, where we built SAP and the IT industry, more or less you program some fixed path in the system and you do always the same. And when you have an AI system, it is more or less self-learning and self-improving. So it is a different beast. So you can really build other systems with this, and it works also completely different. But also what we have heard today in the morning, what Richard mentioned, in this decade until 2029, there's a decrease of population. The only ways to keep the companies up and make their profit margin and everything, you need to apply AI, that you improve the productivity. And as an enterprise architect, as you are and I'm also, you have to understand the complete enterprise architecture components. And a major part who will improve the productivity of your company will be the new area of AI. And there will be, you can use AI from the classic perspective that you use for forecasting, to some different ways of classical use, I would say. Or you can use really AI for coding, like it's a case where you can really reduce the cost and also the maintenance in a kind of way. And in addition, the improvements in this area are so fast. In the last 2-3 years, everyone knows the models, and as Richard mentioned in the morning, buy 8 different services like OpenAI, ChatGPT, or Claude, or your Perplexity costs you $20, and you can already improve the productivity in your company in different ways significantly. So for me, it was a kind of imperative really to think about the next step. And when you talk about an end-to-end enterprise system, then you have SAP with some components, but the major part of productivity and gain will be coming from AI. So and when you start and learn about this, it is more or less major part different. So it is Python and has some other things. There's no ABAP, there's some ABAP, but only to replace mainly. So it's a complete other technology stack what you need to understand and also need to apply to your business processes in the company. It is not a separated system. You can use it in many different components. So I feel really, I have done now 11 years implementing large SAP systems. I can do it also 10 years more until retirement, but it is more or less always the same. You have some escalations, fixes, and then you go to the next one as a global CTO, and you can increase the sales. This is another option. But here you can build really with a new technology stack something different. But it's also a kind of new mindset what you have to apply, and but it's at the end needed for everyone, because you cannot do just an SAP upgrade. Many CIOs told me over the years it costs a lot of money. The value directly is limited, and on the other side I want to get AI applied. And how to do this? You need the HANA platform as a basis to get access to everything, and then you can use this also to change all the processes on top. But from the other side, also a mindset from your side. What do you think is important, or what you see you can recommend to think about?
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. Yeah, I think from my side, right, I'm coming much more from like, I was working on some stuff that would be like considered more the foundation technology side, and then chose to sort of focus on this problem where I saw like the intersection could really have a big impact. So I think the biggest learnings from me are, like, don't just do like, even though my background is purely on the technology side, it doesn't mean I have to keep only doing that, right? Like, and even though my peers, and I still live in San Francisco today, so most of my peers are people working on more technology stuff, even though it's like what's trendy and popular, and working on enterprise software is not considered like a sexy problem. But then, like it's actually like where a lot of the value is, right? Like even though people in Silicon Valley and San Francisco maybe don't talk about it that, but some of the biggest, like you said, some of the biggest companies in Silicon Valley like run on SAP, right? SAP is a huge part of their tech stack, even though it's not talked about as much maybe in the day-to-day conversation. So I think that was like, I mean, even today, like because I still live there, most of my friends are working on something really different, right? Even today, I have to explain to them all the time, like, why are you working on SAP, right? But I would say don't, just be like sort of open-minded, and I actually think this is a much better opportunity than a lot of the pure technology stuff that I was working on in the past, right? So I think be open-minded, really like kind of look for what is like a lot of times like these breakthroughs actually come from the intersection of two completely unrelated fields, right? So like, you guys are probably all experts in SAP and maybe some other stuff, but like a lot of times maybe keeping an open mind and being open to learning about new things could like yield you results that could be quite fruitful at the end. So that's been like, I think my biggest learning from, from doing like going into the space. And yeah, maybe Alexander, do like, any sort of thoughts from your side on the biggest learnings from transitioning from large company as well, right? SAP and Accenture and stuff into working on a smaller startup, and any sort of, what did you feel like you learned, and what mental models did you upgrade and stuff?
I think the interesting thing is when you bring completely two different areas or technology stacks together, it is the intersection, and also, as you see here, like Cursor and other things, Scale AI, these guys who founded these companies are in the 20s. So the fastest growing company, Cursor, who made 100 million yearly recurrent revenue, the fastest growing company, the four founders are in the 20s. So you don't need, unfortunately, 30 years of experience to make the breakthrough in an area, which would be nice. But you can help, and you can bring your knowledge, because when you join forces, like I think we have done, then you can bring really also the SAP ecosystem, who some people say it's not Chinese, it is Japanese. So all this language, I have today seen a glossar, 86 pages of SAP words description, what somebody sent me. So it's interesting. So this is when you bring these areas together and also realize that with these latest skills, the companies in San Francisco, and when you just meet some of the new OpenAI employees, they are directly from Stanford, 2 years in the company and then they're working on the latest things. You will not find them in companies who work 10 or 20 years already on the stack. The latest things are in a few universities collected. And my findings is also, it's at the beginning quite strange to learn about AI because you cannot build on your old skills. On the other side, it is really a very fast improving area. And as just to repeat, as an enterprise architect, when you are open to bring really to your company the latest innovations and technology and bring technology who improve your company's performance, then AI is more or less the key area to get improvements from my perspective. So this is why my wife say always I'm really excited again. So to do something. So and probably some last words from you, Emma. What do you think or want to share with the group?
I think this is great, and probably this is sort of a nice last question to wrap up. Thanks for going to the next slide as well, Paul. But we are working on this company together, and find us at the booth. We'll be at the booth tomorrow, or go to our websites. Happy to, I know we didn't talk much about the company, but happy to chat afterwards if you guys are interested. And thank you guys for listening to our personal stories.
Yeah, we're also outside.
Thank you. So we have them. We featured one startup today, and we're featuring them tomorrow at the far end. So they'll be showing the stuff that they've talked about. And one quick question for each of you. So Emma, in terms of you learning a bit about SAP now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What is the thing that sort of stands out for you the most in the world that these folks live in all the time? Anything that sort of really jumps out at you?
I think, just the complexity and the amount of information. I think it's just really unlike anything I've seen before. It's because I was used to the world of like research prototypes or like a tiny team, like a small, kind of a product that you're building. Versus, I feel like even after a year in SAP, I'm barely scratching the surface of the knowledge here, and that's where people like Alexander and you guys probably are way more experienced than me, and it's just like. It's very impressive, like the system that people built over the last few decades and the functions, and it's a very sort of robust system, right? And a lot to learn, but just the scale of the information here, and it is quite surprising to me even today. So
awesome. And lastly, for you, Alexander, as how to put it, some people hesitate for a while, sort of getting into AI or so jumping on the bandwagon. I'll use that term, for example. Any recommendations for this audience in terms of, from a learning side for their, in essence, AI upgrade, so to speak? What would you advise them to do as an SAP professionals?
I think you are in a very good situation. So the SAP knowledge is a major piece. The AI is different. It takes several months to get really in and also understand what is different. Always remember it's not an SAP system where you have a fixed programmed business process who is speeded up and this is enough. Here you have now more or less data available. The system improve by itself. So you have different ways you can bring the value to your company. You can upgrade your SAP system and use this with codings, and it's cheaper and faster. You can use AI also to build a kind of knowledge core. This is, I think, also important that you bring the knowledge from your old processes you have, often not documented. You have the options to use AI to document more or less your areas, and can you build something in addition. Often, also today, when we talk to a client, even if they want to sign up, since they tell us, oh, yes, the procurement process starts, and it takes for AI even longer than the rest, so because we have more AI compliance rules. So the opportunity is for me extremely large, and for an end-to-end architect, an enterprise architect, I think this is also an interesting area because it is really changing some technology very fast, and you can bring significant value to to
Awesome.
a company from my perspective. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I really want to thank them for sort of coming out and sharing these insights. Like I said, we just had dinner 2 weeks ago in Heidelberg on Friday night and just figured this was a good idea. And it followed back in Rashad. So thank you, both of you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul. All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for it.